The hammer is probably one of the most recognizable and more common hand tools. In fact, you probably have one of these in your own home, and you may have even used one of these before. So in this video, I want to go over a few terms that we all need to be able to communicate with and how to use the hammer really effectively, both the hammer nails and pull nails. So there are a number of really common types of hammers. The one you're probably most familiar with is what's called a claw hammer. That's the one on the left here. So all hammers have a face, and so that's the flat or maybe slightly rounded side of the hammer that you hit nails with, or whatever you hit the hammer with. But on a standard claw hammer, you have this sort of spiky forked thing out the back that's curved, and that's pretty typically used to pull nails. Now, on a hammer that's used for framing carpentry, like building houses or demolition, that claw is going to be a little flatter or have a gentler curve. But on the ones we have in the shop for pulling nails, it has a pretty steep curve. You may also see a hammer like this middle one that's called a ball peen hammer. It's got a face for hammering, but it also has what's called a peen, that ball on the back. And this is typically used in metal work, in this case maybe on rivets, but blacksmiths also use hammers like this that have either maybe a cross peen on the back. I mean, that's for shaping metal as compared to the claw on the hammer for hammering nails and pulling nails. And then on the right here, we have a rubber mallet. So we're classifying it along with the hammers because it's used to hit things. But we don't really want to hit metal with a rubber mallet. We tend to use it on wood or plastic or objects that would be damaged by using a metal hammer. And regardless of the type of hammer, the entire piece at the top of the handle is called the head. So it's the hammer head. And then, of course, we have the handle itself that we hold to swing the hammer. And the advantage of having a handle on any tool like this is that it gives us a lot of leverage and much more power than we would have if we just held the hammer head in our bare hand. So let's talk about nails. Now, there are a ton of different nails out there, all shapes and sizes for many, many different uses. We're really going to focus on just two types of nails. On the right here, we have what are typically called common nails. You may also hear them called box nails. And the biggest distinguishing feature on these is that the head of the nail is wider than the shaft of the nail, substantially wider than the shaft of the nail. As compared to, on the left here, we have what are typically called finish nails, where the head really isn't that much wider than the shaft. And so you could probably figure this out just by looking at them, but with common nails on the right, with that bigger head, no matter what we use them for, they're going to be more visible, and maybe that's fine. But with the finish nails, we tend to use them later in the process of building something, closer to that finishing end of things, and where when we're going to see the head exposed in the wood, it's a much smaller area. Now, all nails, just like all screws, are considered mechanical fasteners. They use a mechanism to actually put two things together. So typically in woodworking, we don't rely on nails to hold, say, a box together. We're going to glue the box together. But so that we don't have to just clamp the box while the glue dries, we nail it together. So we want to use glue and create really nice, good joints. That's where two pieces of wood come together. But the nails are really, in some ways, kind of temporary. They just hold the wood together until the glue dries, but we don't take them out. So they're a mechanical fastener, but when you build, say, like a box using nails, we don't want to rely on just the nails to hold the box together. You're going to want to glue it too. Now, I do hear a lot of students say, well, it's going to be a lot easier to put the common nail in, even though it's maybe bigger, longer. Just because it's got a bigger head, they think it's going to be easier to hit. But no matter what kind of nail you're hammering in, you don't want to aim for the nail head. You want to aim for the center of the shaft. So no matter how big or small the head of that nail is, you shouldn't be trying to hit the head of the nail. You want to be centering your hammer over top of the shaft. Now we're going to cover how to properly hold and swing a hammer. So you have this nice long handle on here, and you want to hold it in what's called a hammer grip. See how my fingers and thumb are wrapped around the handle? I don't have like my thumb on the back of the handle, and I certainly don't have my index finger. That's only going to weaken your swing. You really want to hold it in this full hammer grip. And you don't want to choke up, because that limits the leverage you can get. So you really want to hold from the far end of the hammerhead all the way down that handle. It's going to be the most leverage, the most power you can get. And then also when I swing, notice how that handle ends up, when I hit, ends up pretty much horizontal. So I'm coming totally down all the way so that the face of my hammer is going to land on top of the nail, but the handle is horizontal. So I'm going to give a nail a few taps to kind of get it to set in the wood, and really focus on bringing that hammer down so that the face hits the nail squarely on top, like straight down. And that's where holding that, making sure that handle ends up horizontally is going to do that for you. Give it a few taps to get it set in the wood. And you can see how easy that is when you hold the end of the hammer. Now we can finish it with just a few quick strikes from the hammer. You get a lot of leverage. If, though, after I get my nail started, if I choke up on the hammer, it's going to take so many more swings of the hammer and take a lot more force from my part because I'm not getting the leverage out of the hammer. So I need to swing harder. I need to physically swing harder and many more times. It's just a lot easier to do it the right way, hold it from the end of the hammer. And this may take a few nails to really learn this, get the feel of what that's like to swing this tool on the end of the handle. But you get so much more power, and it's just so much quicker and easier. Now let's say I'm partway into hammering my nail, and I swing off to the side at an angle, and I bend the nail. Uh-oh. Now what do I do? Well, I can try to just keep hammering. I can straighten the nail, but if I don't correct it right away, it's going to get really bad. Now I can, if you do that, I encourage you to try to straighten your nail, because a lot of times you can just keep working with it. And you can still hammer that in. You can see I straighten the nail, and now I'm going to hammer it in all the way, no problem. Again, it's that all-important swinging that hammer so the face comes down squarely on top of that nail, and the handle should end up horizontal. Now, there's not a whole lot different when we're working with finish nails. Yeah, that head is smaller. Maybe it seems like a smaller target. And with some really small finishing nails, you may actually want to hold the nail in a pair of pliers, like a pair of needle nose pliers, to get your fingers out of the way. But otherwise, it's the same thing. You get the nail started, a few quick blows from the hammer, and the nail is in. And that's it. Now to put the claw of the hammer to use. So again, with the claw hammer, it's pretty much for pulling nails, unless you're in construction or demolition. So let's say I get this nail going, and I realize I need to pull that out. Okay, no big deal. Turn the hammer around, and basically the center of the head is going to act as a fulcrum point. So I hook the claw on there, and I'm going to rotate that hammer. But like you can see here, that angle is really not ideal. The hammer's like too low. I need to raise it up like this. So if I shove a shim, just any random scrap of wood under here, the leverage I'm going to get is so much better, and it just pops right out. Now, what if that nail was in? Putting this nail most of the way in. I could pry without the block now, but it gets so much easier if I raise that fulcrum point. I'm magnifying the leverage I get to pry that nail right out. So that's a quick tutorial on how to use a hammer and both the face and the claw really effectively to put in nails and remove them. And go hammer some nails. Have some practice.